The Millionaire CEO never wanted kids, until a little girl showed up with twin babies and called him Dad. Grayson Brooks had always believed in perfect order. His days were precisely structured, meetings and decisions unfolding with clinical efficiency, devoid of emotional clutter or surprises. At 39, he ran a multi-million-dollar corporation from the heights of a gleaming glass tower in downtown New York, a world built on numbers, control, and logic. He prided himself on maintaining absolute composure, a man who never wavered, who saw emotions as weaknesses and chaos as the enemy of success. Most of all, Grayson had no tolerance for children. They were unpredictable, noisy, messy disruptions to the carefully orchestrated symphony of his life. One particularly gray afternoon, as the last traces of sunlight disappeared behind heavy clouds, Grayson stepped out of his office building onto the busy sidewalk, distractedly adjusting the cufflinks of his tailored suit, mind already drifting to his next scheduled engagement. He barely noticed the small, fragile figure standing directly in front of him, until a quiet but insistent voice pulled him sharply from his thoughts. "Excuse me, sir. Are you Grayson Brooks?" Grayson paused, irritated by the interruption, and looked down into the earnest, frightened eyes of a little girl. She was perhaps 7 years old, with pale blonde hair tangled by the wind, bright blue eyes wide with uncertainty, and dressed far too lightly for the chilly weather. She clutched 2 identical toddlers awkwardly in her thin arms, each bundled inadequately against the cold, their tiny faces flushed pink from the harsh wind. Her gaze searched his face anxiously, as if hoping desperately that he was exactly the person she had been sent to find. He frowned slightly, confusion quickly overtaking irritation. "I am." "What do you need?" he asked coolly, glancing briefly around for a parent, guardian, any adult responsible for the small trio, but seeing none. The girl shifted nervously, her small frame trembling slightly beneath the weight of the toddlers she bravely carried. Her voice was quiet but determined as she replied, "My name is Haley. Our mom was Melissa Thompson. Do you remember her?" Grayson's heart jolted abruptly, a cold shock traveling rapidly through his chest. Melissa. The name instantly transported him back in time, 7, perhaps 8 years earlier, recalling the brief, passionate relationship that had ended abruptly, leaving wounds he'd forcibly ignored for years. Melissa had been vibrant, warm, emotional, everything he'd never allowed himself to be. Their romance had been intense, memorable, but ultimately unsustainable. He hadn't seen her since their parting. He certainly hadn't expected to hear her name again, especially not like this, spoken by a child he didn't recognize. "I remember her," Grayson answered slowly, cautiously, his voice softer, betraying a rare moment of vulnerability. "But what's going on? Why are you here, and where is your mother?" Haley's eyes filled suddenly with tears, and her small mouth trembled slightly as she fought to maintain composure, speaking with a maturity painfully beyond her years. "Our mom passed away," she whispered shakily, blinking quickly, bravely restraining tears. She said if anything happened to her, I should come find you. She wrote you this letter." Awkwardly balancing the toddlers against her small body, Haley reached into a pocket of her thin coat and handed him a worn, slightly crumpled envelope bearing Melissa's familiar handwriting. Grayson took the envelope numbly, his carefully controlled expression beginning to fracture under the weight of shock and disbelief. He opened the letter with trembling hands, unfolding the single page carefully as the cold wind threatened to snatch it from his fingers. Melissa's words, clear and unmistakably her own, filled the page, each sentence slicing deeper into his composure. "Grayson, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I never told you, but after we parted, I discovered I was pregnant. Lucas and Logan are your sons. Haley is my daughter from another man, but now she has no one left either. I'm sorry for not reaching out sooner, but I never wanted to disrupt your life. Now, I have no choice. Please, if you ever cared for me at all, protect them. Don't let them disappear into the system. They have no one but you." He stared at the letter, words blurring slightly, heart pounding painfully in his chest. His world tilted sharply, the cold logic and carefully constructed life he had meticulously maintained dissolving beneath the shocking realization. The twin toddlers, whose wide gray eyes matched his own, now looked up at him uncertainly, unaware of the gravity of the moment. Haley stood quietly, bravely awaiting his reaction, visibly terrified but determined, her young shoulders carrying burdens no child should bear. Grayson drew a sharp breath, trying desperately to regain control over the chaos that had suddenly engulfed him. He knew nothing about being a father, wanted nothing to do with the messy reality that children represented, yet Melissa's words had pierced something deep inside him, shattering walls he'd carefully built. He looked down again at Haley, noticing now how pale and thin she seemed beneath her bravery, how fiercely she held on to the small, vulnerable boys. In that cold, uncertain moment, he recognized one undeniable truth: everything he had avoided, everything he had resisted, was suddenly staring back at him, demanding acknowledgement and action. Life had just forced his hand, thrusting upon him a responsibility he'd never sought, yet now could not deny. He didn't know how to respond, what to say, how to comfort the fragile children standing before him, but he realized, ready or not, he was their only chance. Melissa had chosen him, trusted him despite his resistance to love or commitment. For the first time in his carefully controlled life, Grayson Brooks felt utterly helpless, terrified, and profoundly needed. Grayson stood for several seconds, motionless and silent, the sharp edges of the envelope digging into his palm as he stared down at Haley and the twins. A deep wave of disbelief mixed with confusion surged within him, and for the first time in years, he felt utterly uncertain. Melissa's letter had shaken something he had deliberately sealed away long ago, memories and emotions he'd meticulously buried beneath layers of ambition and control. Haley watched him carefully, her eyes filled with a fragile hope and quiet desperation. Without knowing what else to do, Grayson finally folded the letter, slipping it carefully into his suit jacket pocket. He realized he couldn't leave them standing there, exposed, vulnerable, alone on a cold street corner as nightfall rapidly approached. "Come inside," he said quietly, surprising himself as much as Haley. "It's cold. We'll figure this out." Haley nodded quickly, her small face showing clear relief as she awkwardly adjusted the two squirming toddlers in her arms. Grayson led them back through the revolving glass doors into the lobby of his office building, the receptionist's eyes widening in undisguised shock at the sight of her usually unflappable boss escorting three small children. Ignoring the confused stares of his employees, Grayson guided them toward a private conference room, quietly instructing his assistant to fetch warm drinks and food immediately. Inside the room, Grayson shut the door, momentarily relieved by the privacy and silence, allowing himself to absorb the situation fully. Haley carefully lowered the twins onto a large sofa, gently adjusting their coats and softly murmuring reassurances as they fussed tiredly. Grayson watched silently, an unexpected pang of tenderness piercing his heart as he observed the girl's practiced care, her maturity clearly born from necessity rather than choice. He felt strangely helpless, unsure of his next step or how to speak with children, especially those whose lives had so suddenly collided with his own. After a long pause, Haley looked up at him with large, serious eyes. "I know this is probably really weird for you," she whispered carefully, her voice calm but edged with anxiety, "but we didn't have anywhere else to go. Mom said you would help us. She said you were kind, even if you pretend not to be." Grayson's throat tightened uncomfortably. Melissa had always seen through him, had always believed there was more beneath his surface than he allowed anyone else to witness. I'm sorry your mom's gone," he finally managed, his voice rougher than intended, betraying unexpected emotion. Haley's brave expression faltered for a moment, tears silently slipping down her cheeks. "Me too," she whispered. "I miss her so much." Unable to bear the pain in her small face, Grayson moved instinctively closer, kneeling cautiously beside her. He didn't know how to comfort a grieving child, but somehow his hand reached out, gently resting on her thin shoulder. She leaned slightly into his touch, seeming grateful for even this small gesture of compassion. Moments later, the door opened quietly, his assistant bringing in hot chocolate and sandwiches. The twins perked up instantly at the scent of food, their tiny faces brightening with innocent excitement. Haley gratefully accepted the offered drink, sipping carefully, warmth slowly returning color to her pale cheeks. Grayson watched quietly, feeling the undeniable weight of responsibility settling heavily upon him. He wasn't prepared for this: children, fatherhood, the messy, emotional complexities of family, but neither could he turn away from them. They were here now, a living reminder of the love and loss he had long ago buried. After a while, Haley spoke again, more softly this time, a touch of hesitation in her voice. "Mom said you might not want us at first. She said you were very busy, very important. But she said we should wait. She thought you would change your mind." Grayson met her gaze solemnly, feeling the full weight of Melissa's faith pressing on his heart. "Your mom knew me better than I realized," he murmured quietly. "I might not know what to do yet, but you're not alone now, Haley. I promise you that." A small, hopeful smile spread across Haley's tired face, the trust and relief in her eyes unmistakable. Later that evening, after arranging temporary accommodations at a nearby hotel suite, Grayson escorted Haley and the twins through the hotel lobby, ignoring curious stares as he quietly checked them in. Once settled in their room, the twins curled up sleepily, drifting quickly into slumber. Haley hesitated, clearly exhausted yet uncertain, glancing nervously toward Grayson as if afraid he might vanish when she closed her eyes. "I'll come back tomorrow," Grayson reassured her gently, sensing her anxiety. "We'll sort everything out. Try to rest tonight. You're safe now." Haley finally nodded, laying her head down carefully, eyes closing slowly as exhaustion overtook her. Watching quietly until all three children slept soundly, Grayson left the hotel room with a heavy heart. Walking through the chilly night toward his own apartment, he felt utterly unprepared yet strangely resolved. His life, so carefully organized and controlled, had suddenly become uncertain, filled with unknowns. Yet beneath his fear lay a quiet determination, something deeper and stronger than his own resistance. Melissa had entrusted him with something more precious than wealth, power, or control. He couldn't turn away, no matter how terrifying or difficult this path might become. For the first time in many years, Grayson Brooks felt genuinely needed, and quietly resolved to embrace whatever challenges this unexpected journey would bring. Grayson woke early the next morning, staring silently at the stark white ceiling of his upscale apartment, sleep having evaded him entirely. His mind churned relentlessly through scenarios and fears, grappling with the upheaval that had disrupted his carefully ordered life. Haley's earnest blue eyes haunted him, along with the fragile, hopeful faces of the twin toddlers who shared his unmistakable features. He felt overwhelmed and unsure, the magnitude of the responsibility Melissa had entrusted him with pressing heavily upon his shoulders. As dawn slowly illuminated his bedroom, he realized he could no longer retreat to the comfort of denial or avoidance. His life had irrevocably changed, and he would need to face this reality head-on. After dressing and composing himself, Grayson arrived at the hotel suite early, bearing fresh clothing, toys, and breakfast items recommended by his bewildered but helpful assistant. Haley opened the door cautiously, her face immediately brightening upon seeing him standing there. The twins crawled happily on the carpet nearby, babbling softly, their innocent curiosity temporarily distracting them from the recent upheaval. "You came back," Haley whispered quietly, her voice carrying a deep relief that tugged painfully at Grayson's heart. He managed a gentle smile, setting down the bags and stepping into the room. "I promised I would," he replied softly, watching as Haley's small shoulders relaxed slightly, reassured by his presence. Over the next few hours, Grayson clumsily navigated the unfamiliar world of child care, helping Haley dress the twins in new outfits, feeding them breakfast while attempting to minimize chaos, and even learning to properly fasten diapers with only minimal awkwardness. Haley patiently instructed him, her seriousness occasionally breaking into small giggles as he fumbled uncertainly, staining his crisp white shirt with banana puree or finding a stray pacifier lodged unexpectedly in his suit pocket. Despite the discomfort of feeling entirely out of his depth, Grayson found himself unexpectedly smiling at Haley's gentle laughter, warmed by the way the twins reached eagerly for him, their tiny hands grasping at his fingers, trusting and unafraid. Later that afternoon, as the twins slept peacefully, Grayson sat quietly with Haley at the small hotel dining table, finally beginning the conversation he'd been dreading yet knew he could no longer avoid. "Haley," he began softly, his tone gentle but serious, "I need you to tell me everything. What happened? How long have you three been alone?" Haley took a slow, deep breath, clearly summoning courage, her eyes sad but determined. "Mom got sick a while ago," she began quietly, voice trembling slightly. "She tried really hard to hide it from us, but I knew something was wrong. Eventually, she had to go to the hospital, but she made sure the neighbors helped us while she was gone. She said everything would be okay. She said she would get better, but..." Her voice broke, tears filling her eyes. Grayson reached out instinctively, gently placing his hand over hers, silently encouraging her to continue. "But she didn't," Haley whispered, her tears falling freely now. "She passed away a week ago. The neighbors called social workers, but I was scared. Mom always said if anything happened, we had to find you. She said you'd protect us." Grayson felt his heart twist sharply at her words, overwhelmed by the courage and maturity forced upon such a small child. "I'm so sorry, Haley," he murmured sincerely, feeling deeply inadequate yet determined to offer whatever comfort he could. "Your mother was very brave. And you're just like her." Haley looked up at him earnestly, seeming comforted by his gentle acknowledgement. "Do you think she'd be proud of me?" she asked quietly, vulnerability shining in her tearful gaze. Grayson nodded firmly, speaking softly but sincerely. "Incredibly proud. You've done something most adults could never manage. You protected your brothers. You came to me. You're remarkable." As the afternoon stretched toward evening, Grayson began quietly making arrangements to care for the children longer term, carefully consulting legal advisors, nannies, and child care professionals. He realized quickly that simply providing financial support wasn't enough. These children needed stability, safety, and most importantly, emotional presence. Though deeply unfamiliar and frightening, Grayson recognized he was the one person Melissa had trusted to provide exactly that. He could not let her down. While Haley rested briefly, exhausted by her emotional recounting, Grayson sat quietly beside the twins' sleeping forms, watching their tiny chests rise and fall softly. In those quiet moments, he made a silent vow, to himself, to Melissa, and to the children, he would become someone they could truly rely on, even if it required reshaping everything he had believed about himself. Later that night, as Haley drifted back into sleep, curled up comfortably in her new bed, Grayson returned to his apartment, carrying the weight of responsibility more fully than ever before. He stood silently in the empty living room, reflecting on how utterly transformed his world had become in just 2 short days. Everything he had carefully planned and meticulously controlled now seemed strangely irrelevant in comparison to the fragile lives entrusted to him. Despite his lingering fears and uncertainty, he felt a new determination growing steadily within him. Perhaps this chaos he had long resisted held a purpose deeper than any he had known before, perhaps this unplanned family was precisely what he needed most. Though the path ahead remained uncertain and challenging, Grayson Brooks knew without doubt he was no longer running away. For the first time, he was running towards something meaningful and real. Over the next several weeks, Grayson gradually adjusted to the unfamiliar rhythm of fatherhood, facing each day's new challenges with determination tempered by humility. He quickly realized how ill-equipped he was to care for 3 young children alone, despite his best intentions. Hiring a trusted nanny named Sarah helped immensely. Her calm, patient presence provided invaluable guidance as he navigated feeding schedules, bath routines, and restless bedtimes. Still, Grayson insisted on learning as much as possible himself, awkwardly but earnestly changing diapers, soothing cries, preparing bottles, and handling Haley's emotional ups and downs with patience he never knew he possessed. Haley remained remarkably resilient, though her grief sometimes surfaced unexpectedly, leaving her quiet, withdrawn, and teary. Grayson found himself increasingly attuned to her moods, sitting patiently beside her when sadness overcame her, never pressuring her to speak, simply offering silent comfort. She began to trust him more each day, opening up slowly, sharing memories of Melissa, her fears about the future, and even quiet hopes about school, friendships, and the life they were beginning to build together. Watching her blossom, gradually reclaiming the innocence and joy of childhood, filled Grayson with quiet pride and deepening affection. Yet, despite the progress made at home, Grayson's professional world soon grew turbulent. The media quickly discovered the shocking news that the famous CEO had become a sudden father to 3 young children, 2 of whom were his biological sons. Headlines exploded across newspapers and websites, gossip columns spinning scandalous narratives, speculating wildly about his past relationship with Melissa, his motivations, and his capability as a parent. The board of directors, already uneasy about his divided attention, convened hastily to address their concerns, summoning Grayson to an emergency meeting one rainy Monday morning. In the sleek boardroom high above Manhattan, tension hung thick in the air as Grayson calmly faced his colleagues, each regarding him with varying degrees of skepticism or concern. "Grayson," began his senior partner, Arthur Mitchell, voice carefully controlled but firm, "we appreciate your personal circumstances are complicated. But the company can't afford distractions at this crucial stage. Investors are anxious, shareholders uncertain. We need your full attention. A public scandal jeopardizes everything we've built." Grayson listened silently, his expression unreadable as the weight of their words settled heavily upon him. He understood their fears, he'd shared them himself for years. But now, hearing their cold, clinical reasoning, he realized something profound had shifted within him. "I understand your concerns," he finally responded quietly, voice calm but resolute. "But I won't abandon my family. Not now, not ever. I'm willing to adjust my role, delegate responsibilities, whatever it takes. But if you're asking me to choose between my company and those children, I've already made that choice." Stunned silence filled the room, the directors exchanging incredulous glances, surprised by his unwavering commitment. Arthur cleared his throat awkwardly, clearly unprepared for Grayson's response. "We aren't asking you to abandon your family, Grayson," he replied cautiously. "But shareholders demand reassurance. They need to see decisive action that protects company interests." Grayson stood slowly, gaze steady and determined, his voice carrying quiet but unmistakable authority. "Then allow me to reassure them. I will publicly address the situation myself. I'll handle the media directly, openly. My children aren't liabilities, they're my responsibility, and they'll become my greatest strength. Trust me to navigate this honestly. The company won't suffer, if anything, we'll demonstrate integrity. Isn't that what we've always stood for?" Arthur hesitated briefly before finally nodding slowly, his expression thoughtful but wary. "Very well. But understand the risk. Public perception is unpredictable, Grayson. We're trusting you not to let personal obligations compromise everything." Grayson left the meeting quietly resolute, preparing carefully over the next few days for a public statement, consulting closely with advisors, yet determined to speak honestly from the heart. On the chosen day, he stood calmly behind a podium before assembled reporters, cameras clicking urgently, the bright spotlight illuminating his face. Haley stood bravely beside him, clutching his hand nervously, the twins sleeping peacefully in their stroller, blissfully unaware of the chaos surrounding them. "I know many of you have questions," Grayson began calmly, voice steady and sincere. "Yes, I recently became father to these 3 children under tragic circumstances. Their mother, Melissa Thompson, was someone very special to me, a woman of extraordinary strength and kindness. She entrusted me with their care, believing I could protect and nurture them. I intend fully to honor that trust. Yes, balancing this responsibility with my professional obligations will be challenging. But I assure you, it won't compromise my commitment to my company or our stakeholders. If anything, it deepens it. I've learned recently that true strength isn't control, it's the ability to adapt, to grow, to embrace responsibilities bigger than oneself." Reporters scribbled rapidly, murmurs rippling through the gathered crowd. Haley glanced up nervously, eyes wide with uncertainty, silently seeking reassurance. Grayson gently squeezed her hand, smiling softly down at her before continuing steadily. "These children aren't a distraction, they are my family. And they've taught me humility, compassion, and patience I lacked before. If investors and shareholders have doubts, let my actions moving forward reassure them. My family isn't my weakness, they're my purpose." Applause slowly spread through the crowd, first hesitant, then building with unexpected enthusiasm. Cameras flashed rapidly, capturing images of Grayson calmly embracing Haley, kneeling gently to soothe one of the twins as they stirred sleepily. Headlines quickly shifted, public opinion transforming overnight from suspicion to admiration. The board, reassured by positive media coverage and steady investor confidence, quietly conceded their doubts. That evening, back home as the twins slept and Haley curled up contentedly beside him, Grayson felt deep relief and quiet pride. He knew more challenges awaited, fatherhood and leadership demanded constant strength and humility. Yet he no longer feared the unknown future ahead. The life he once resisted, filled with chaos, noise, and unpredictability, now felt like precisely where he belonged. His world, once so tightly controlled, had expanded dramatically, becoming infinitely richer, warmer, and profoundly meaningful, shaped by the family he had never expected but now cherished above all else. As the days turned into weeks, Grayson began finding stability and quiet comfort in his new role as a father. The initial storm of media attention had gradually settled, allowing him the space to adjust privately to his dramatically altered life. Each morning, waking early to the sounds of Haley quietly talking with the twins, he felt a warmth he had never anticipated, a sense of home that was both unfamiliar and deeply comforting. Sarah, their nanny, continued to guide him patiently through the intricacies of child-rearing, yet he discovered he no longer relied solely on her instructions. Slowly, instinctively, Grayson was learning to understand his children's needs himself, recognizing the subtle differences in the twins' cries, sensing when Haley's cheerful facade hid deeper sadness, and intuitively knowing when quiet reassurance was more effective than words. Despite his growing confidence as a parent, Grayson remained acutely aware of how fragile their newfound stability truly was. Haley, though remarkably strong and mature for her age, still grappled silently with lingering grief and uncertainty. Some evenings, after the twins had settled into sleep, he would sit beside her quietly, letting her lead conversations at her own pace, gently encouraging her to express fears, memories, or worries when she felt ready. Those quiet moments together strengthened the delicate bond between them, deepening Haley's trust and reinforcing Grayson's commitment to providing the emotional support she desperately needed. One rainy evening, after putting the twins down to sleep, Grayson found Haley sitting silently on the sofa, staring absently out the window, her small frame tense, expression thoughtful but distant. Quietly joining her, he waited patiently until she turned toward him hesitantly, eyes filled with quiet uncertainty. "Grayson, can I ask you something?" she began softly, her voice trembling slightly, clearly nervous about voicing her question. He nodded gently, silently encouraging her to continue. Are you going to keep us forever? Or are we still temporary?" Grayson felt his heart clench painfully at her quiet, uncertain question, deeply saddened yet unsurprised by her lingering doubts. Carefully taking her small hand in his, he answered sincerely, meeting her anxious gaze steadily. "Haley, listen to me carefully. You are not temporary. None of you are. When your mom asked me to take care of you, I promised myself, and I promise you now, that I'm here for good. Forever. No matter what happens, you and your brothers are my family. Understand?" Haley's eyes shimmered softly, clearly comforted by his unwavering assurance. "I'm glad," she whispered, leaning gently against his side, allowing herself to finally relax fully in his presence. They sat quietly together, watching rain softly tap against the window, a peaceful silence enveloping them as the delicate trust between them grew even stronger. However, despite their increasing closeness, Grayson could sense something deeper troubling Haley, a lingering anxiety she hadn't yet revealed. Finally, one evening, as they cleaned up after dinner, Haley hesitated, visibly struggling with an internal conflict before speaking quietly. "Grayson, there's something else. Before Mom got sick, she was looking for my dad, my biological dad. She said I should know where I come from. But she couldn't find him. Do you think that means he didn't want me?" Grayson's heart ached deeply, saddened by her painful question and the uncertainty haunting her. Kneeling gently beside her, he placed comforting hands softly on her shoulders, speaking carefully and honestly. "Haley, your father's absence doesn't mean he didn't want you. Life can be complicated, and sometimes people don't always make the best choices. But never doubt your worth or your importance. Even if your biological dad isn't here, you have me. And I want you. I chose you. Understand?" Her eyes filled quietly with tears, and she embraced him tightly, finally releasing the fear she'd hidden for so long. Grayson held her gently, allowing her to cry freely, knowing this moment was essential to her healing. "You're my dad now," she whispered softly, her voice filled with quiet certainty. "And I love you." Grayson felt emotion tighten sharply in his throat, deeply moved by her heartfelt declaration. "I love you too, Haley," he whispered sincerely, silently vowing to protect and cherish the trust she had given him. From that moment, their bond grew stronger, anchored firmly by love and trust rather than merely necessity or circumstance. In the following days, Grayson quietly decided it was time to formalize their family legally, ensuring permanent security for Haley and the twins. He began carefully arranging legal paperwork to officially adopt Haley, clearly understanding the significance and reassurance such a step would provide. When he finally shared his decision with her one quiet evening, she reacted with overwhelming joy, tears filling her eyes as she eagerly hugged him, fully embracing the family they had built together. As the adoption proceedings began moving smoothly forward, Grayson noticed a new, quiet confidence emerging in Haley. She began smiling more easily, engaging happily in school, friendships, and hobbies she'd previously approached with hesitation. Witnessing her gradual transformation filled Grayson with immense pride, quietly grateful for the family he had never anticipated but now couldn't imagine life without. One afternoon, as they walked peacefully through a nearby park, Grayson watched as Haley gently guided the twins toward a small duck pond, patiently explaining something about birds to her attentive little brothers. He stood silently, observing their innocent interactions, feeling deeply moved by the simple beauty of the moment. This life, filled with laughter, challenges, and warmth, was far richer than any success or control he had previously pursued. Later that evening, after tucking the twins into bed and reading quietly with Haley, Grayson found himself reflecting on how dramatically his priorities had shifted. Once obsessed with control and professional achievement, he now understood clearly that true strength lay not in isolation or perfection, but in vulnerability, compassion, and love. His journey with Haley and the twins had challenged and transformed him deeply, reshaping his heart and life into something profoundly meaningful and fulfilling. As he quietly closed Haley's bedroom door, Grayson knew without doubt that choosing to fully embrace fatherhood and family, despite its unpredictability and complexity, had been the single most important and rewarding decision of his life. For the first time, he felt not just successful, but truly complete. As summer gradually faded into autumn, Grayson felt a new rhythm settle deeply and comfortably into their lives. He had grown accustomed to waking early, hearing the joyful babbling of Lucas and Logan echoing softly through the house, their tiny voices punctuated by Haley's gentle laughter. Though his corporate responsibilities remained demanding, he found himself increasingly efficient at managing his time, driven by a genuine desire to spend more meaningful moments with his family. Even his employees noticed a subtle but distinct change in their previously unapproachable CEO. He was warmer, more patient, his decisions tempered with compassion rather than strictly driven by profit. With each passing day, Haley grew stronger and more confident, her initial fears and anxieties gradually replaced by quiet happiness and security. Watching her blossom brought Grayson immense pride and relief. She began excelling in school, forming friendships easily, even inviting classmates home occasionally, something she previously avoided due to embarrassment or fear. On weekends, Grayson made sure to carve out special time for them, trips to museums, parks, or simply relaxing afternoons spent at home baking cookies or building pillow forts. Their bond continued deepening naturally, rooted firmly now in trust, affection, and mutual respect. One cool, bright autumn weekend, as colorful leaves drifted gently to the ground, Grayson decided to take Haley and the twins to a nearby apple orchard. He felt surprisingly excited about the simple family outing, something he would never have imagined enjoying previously. Haley eagerly ran through the rows of apple trees, her joyful laughter ringing through the crisp air, as the twins toddled happily beside him, fascinated by the soft grass, fallen leaves, and colorful fruits scattered across the orchard grounds. As they stopped beneath a particularly beautiful apple tree, Haley paused thoughtfully, her expression suddenly serious as she looked carefully up at Grayson. "You know," she began softly, voice sincere but cautious, "Mom always said you were a really good person deep down, even when you didn't believe it yourself. She always told us stories about you, how smart you were, how kind you could be if you let yourself. I never told you before, but I always hoped she was right. Now I know she was." Grayson felt deeply touched by her quiet admission, emotion tightening sharply in his chest. He gently reached out, brushing her golden hair softly away from her face. "Your mom was always wise, Haley," he responded sincerely. "Wiser than me. It just took me longer to realize it. And you, all of you, helped me see the truth she always believed in." Haley smiled warmly, quietly slipping her small hand into his, comforted and reassured by their deepening connection. Grayson watched quietly as she then carefully lifted Lucas and Logan gently onto a soft blanket spread beneath the tree, patiently handing each boy small apple slices, guiding their tiny fingers gently. In that quiet moment beneath the tree, surrounded by soft sunlight and gently falling leaves, Grayson felt utterly at peace. This family he had never planned for, never anticipated, had quietly but profoundly transformed him into a far better man. In the days following their orchard visit, Grayson received an unexpected phone call, a call from an attorney representing Haley's biological father. The news initially unsettled him deeply, stirring unexpected anxiety. The attorney explained that Haley's biological father had recently discovered Melissa's passing and expressed interest in establishing contact with Haley, wishing to potentially assume custody. Grayson felt instantly protective, anxiety and fear gripping him tightly, knowing this news would shake the fragile stability Haley had finally achieved. Later that evening, after the twins had fallen asleep, Grayson carefully approached Haley, gently explaining the unexpected news, trying his best to remain calm and reassuring. He watched anxiously as emotions flickered quietly across her face, confusion, fear, curiosity, and sadness. "Do you think he wants me now?" she asked quietly, her voice trembling slightly, eyes wide with uncertainty. Grayson carefully placed his hand reassuringly on her shoulder, speaking firmly yet gently. "Haley, you always have a say in this. You're not alone. No matter what happens, you're my daughter, and nothing changes that. Understand?" Haley nodded softly, visibly comforted by his unwavering reassurance. Over the following days, they carefully discussed her feelings and fears, Grayson ensuring she never felt pressured or rushed. Finally, after quiet contemplation, Haley decided cautiously that she wished to meet her biological father, though she clearly expressed that Grayson was her true father, the one who had chosen her, protected her, and given her family when she needed it most. The meeting was scheduled carefully, held at a quiet, neutral location. Grayson remained close beside Haley, quietly supportive, fiercely protective. Her biological father, a quiet, nervous man named Jonathan, appeared awkward and uncertain, clearly aware of his mistakes and absence from Haley's life. Their conversation remained respectful but cautious, Jonathan expressing regret for his absence, gently asking forgiveness. Haley listened quietly, clearly struggling with emotions, finally speaking softly but firmly. "I forgive you, but I already have a dad. Grayson chose me, took care of me. He's my father, and I don't want to leave him." Jonathan nodded understandingly, accepting her quiet declaration with humility and respect. After the meeting, as Grayson gently guided Haley home, she quietly slipped her hand into his, gripping it tightly. "You're my real dad," she whispered sincerely, eyes shining softly with quiet certainty. Grayson felt deeply moved, gently squeezing her hand in return, quietly grateful for her unwavering trust and loyalty. In the weeks that followed, their family bond became even stronger, the difficult encounter only reinforcing their commitment to one another. The adoption proceedings moved smoothly forward, eventually finalized in a small, heartfelt ceremony attended by their closest friends. As they celebrated quietly afterward, Haley stood bravely beside Grayson, the twins nestled gently in his arms, their family complete, whole, and unbreakable. Later that evening, as they quietly returned home, Haley fell asleep peacefully in the car, her head resting softly against Grayson's shoulder. He held her gently, feeling deeply grateful, profoundly humbled by the life he had now fully embraced. Despite challenges and uncertainty, their family had grown stronger, rooted firmly in unconditional love and quiet courage. He had finally discovered his true purpose, not in power, wealth, or control, but in the quiet strength of family, compassion, and selfless love. As winter gently approached, Grayson's life became centered around the simple, cherished rhythms of family. Their home, once cold and meticulously ordered, now echoed warmly with laughter, playful cries, and quiet evenings spent reading bedtime stories or sharing softly whispered conversations. Haley blossomed further, becoming more self-assured and emotionally secure, the shadows of grief and fear gradually replaced by hope and genuine happiness. The twins grew quickly, each day bringing new milestones that Grayson proudly witnessed, first steps, first clear words, and joyful, mischievous laughter filling their home. Although challenges occasionally arose, Grayson had learned patience, resilience, and humility, viewing difficulties not as burdens, but as opportunities to strengthen their family's bond even more deeply. One snowy Saturday morning, as delicate snowflakes drifted gently outside their window, Grayson and Haley carefully dressed the twins in warm winter gear, preparing for a peaceful walk through the quiet, snow-covered neighborhood. Bundled warmly, the family stepped outside into the serene winter landscape, the twins immediately enchanted by the gently falling snow, tiny hands reaching curiously toward the drifting flakes. Haley laughed softly, gently catching snowflakes with Lucas and Logan, showing them how each delicate crystal sparkled briefly in her palm before melting away. As they walked quietly together, Grayson watched his children play and laugh, feeling an overwhelming sense of quiet gratitude and peace. His heart felt full, deeply moved by the innocent joy and simple beauty surrounding him. Haley eventually paused thoughtfully, looking up at him with gentle curiosity. "Grayson," she began softly, her voice clear and confident, "Mom always dreamed about having days like this, just quiet, happy moments together as a family. I think she'd be really happy seeing us like this, don't you?" Grayson nodded slowly, deeply touched by her words, emotions rising gently in his chest. "Yes, Haley. I think your mom would be incredibly proud. She wanted this for all of us, even when I didn't understand it myself." Haley smiled warmly, slipping her hand gently into his, walking quietly together as the twins toddled happily beside them, their small faces flushed pink from the crisp winter air. However, as Christmas approached, Grayson noticed a quiet sadness returning to Haley, her bright eyes occasionally dimmed by lingering grief and uncertainty. Recognizing the significance of their first holiday without Melissa, he resolved gently to create a meaningful tribute, acknowledging her memory openly rather than avoiding it. With Haley's help, they carefully decorated the home, thoughtfully placing Melissa's favorite ornaments prominently, softly reminiscing about her traditions and stories. Haley's mood gradually brightened again, comforted by Grayson's quiet acknowledgement and genuine care. On Christmas Eve, after gently tucking the twins into bed, Grayson found Haley quietly standing by the Christmas tree, thoughtfully holding a small framed photo of Melissa, eyes shimmering softly with unshed tears. He approached quietly, gently placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "It's okay to miss her, Haley," he whispered softly, voice gentle yet steady. "We'll always carry her memory forward together." Haley nodded softly, leaning gratefully against him, quietly comforted by his unwavering presence. Later that evening, as snow continued gently falling outside, they sat quietly together, softly reminiscing, honoring Melissa's memory while also celebrating the family they had become. Haley eventually drifted to sleep peacefully beside him, head resting gently on his shoulder, the quiet warmth of their bond anchoring Grayson deeply. Christmas morning dawned brightly, the house filled with joyful laughter as the twins eagerly explored colorful wrapping paper, excitedly discovering new toys beneath the sparkling tree. Haley happily guided them, laughing warmly as Lucas and Logan toddled gleefully through the festive morning chaos. Grayson watched quietly, feeling deeply grateful, profoundly humbled by the simple joy surrounding him, his heart finally at peace. Days later, as the new year approached, Grayson quietly made another decision, one reflecting both deep commitment and heartfelt symbolism. With quiet determination, he began carefully planning a memorial fund dedicated to Melissa's memory, specifically designed to support struggling single-parent families in need. Haley enthusiastically participated, thoughtfully suggesting meaningful ways to honor her mother's legacy through charity and compassionate action. On New Year's Eve, during a peaceful family dinner at home, Grayson quietly presented Haley with official documentation of the memorial fund named after Melissa, gently explaining how its purpose would help many families facing hardships similar to what Melissa had bravely overcome. Haley's eyes shimmered softly, deeply moved by Grayson's thoughtful gesture and sincere compassion. "She'd love this," Haley whispered sincerely, her voice thick with emotion. "Mom always believed in helping others, even when things were hard for us." Grayson gently squeezed her hand reassuringly, his own heart filled with quiet gratitude and profound respect for Melissa's legacy and the remarkable daughter she had raised. As midnight quietly approached, marking the beginning of a fresh, hopeful new year, Grayson gently carried the sleeping twins upstairs, Haley walking quietly beside him, helping carefully tuck them into bed. Returning downstairs, Haley curled comfortably beside him, quietly reflecting on the year they had just experienced together, the struggles, uncertainties, and fears gradually replaced by trust, strength, and genuine happiness. "This year started so scary," she whispered softly, voice gentle yet steady, "but now it's ending better than I ever imagined. Thank you for choosing us, Grayson, for not giving up, even when it was hard." Grayson gently wrapped his arm around her shoulders, holding her closely, deeply moved by her quiet sincerity. "I should be thanking you," he whispered softly in return. "You, Lucas, Logan, you showed me what truly matters. You taught me how to love." As the clock quietly struck midnight, marking a hopeful new beginning, Grayson felt utterly content and profoundly grateful. The family he had never anticipated had quietly reshaped his world, filling it with warmth, meaning, and purpose beyond anything he had previously imagined. He knew challenges still awaited, parenthood, family, and love were never without difficulties, but he felt deeply ready and quietly determined, his heart anchored firmly in the family he cherished above all else. As spring gently returned, breathing warmth and life back into the world, Grayson found himself reflecting deeply on how dramatically his life had changed over the past year. His journey from distant, emotionally closed-off CEO to devoted father and caring guardian had been filled with moments of both profound difficulty and quiet joy. Yet through every challenge, every uncertain step, he had grown stronger, humbler, and more compassionate, shaped by the unconditional love of 3 children who had entered his life so unexpectedly yet transformed him completely. Haley thrived with each passing day, her confidence, happiness, and emotional security deepening steadily. Her laughter filled their home, joyful and carefree, her bond with Lucas and Logan strong, nurturing, and protective. The twins, now toddlers, blossomed energetically, each milestone, first sentences, playful explorations, boundless curiosity, filling Grayson with immense pride and gratitude. Watching his children grow, learning alongside them, feeling their trust and love deepen every day, was more meaningful and rewarding than any professional accomplishment he had previously pursued. One quiet evening, as the twins slept peacefully and Haley sat beside him, happily drawing in a sketchbook, Grayson felt a sudden clarity, an overwhelming desire to formalize their family even more permanently. Although Haley's adoption had provided legal stability, he realized something equally important remained unspoken. Quietly clearing his throat, he gently took Haley's hand, prompting her to glance up curiously. "Haley," he began softly, his voice warm but serious, "there's something important I want to ask you. We've become a true family, haven't we?" Haley smiled warmly, nodding confidently. "Of course we have," she answered gently, clearly sensing the sincerity in his voice. Grayson paused briefly, choosing his next words carefully. "Then I'd like your permission for something important. I want us all to share the same name, officially. I'd like to legally give you my last name, so everyone knows exactly how proud I am that you're my daughter. Would that be okay with you?" Haley's eyes widened softly, clearly moved by his gentle, heartfelt proposal. "You really want me to have your name?" she whispered softly, voice trembling slightly with emotion. Grayson squeezed her hand reassuringly, his expression sincere and unwavering. "Nothing would make me happier. It means we're connected forever, in every way possible. It means we truly belong together." Tears filled Haley's eyes as she hugged him tightly, nodding eagerly. "Yes, Grayson," she whispered sincerely. "I would love to have your name. Thank you for choosing me, for loving me like a real daughter." In the weeks following their conversation, the legal paperwork was carefully filed, making Haley officially a Brooks. They quietly celebrated as a family, sharing a special dinner at home, joyful laughter filling the room. Lucas and Logan happily clapped, understanding only that something important and joyful was happening around them. Grayson watched his children, deeply moved by the simplicity and warmth of the moment, grateful for the family he had never anticipated but now cherished completely. As the months passed peacefully, Grayson continued reflecting deeply, finally recognizing something equally profound: he wanted to share his newfound happiness with others beyond his immediate family. The memorial fund honoring Melissa had quietly expanded, providing essential resources to struggling families throughout the community. Haley proudly participated, gently helping distribute toys, clothing, and necessities to families facing hardships similar to those she had experienced. Witnessing his daughter's compassion and kindness filled Grayson with immense pride, knowing Melissa's legacy continued beautifully through Haley's generous actions. One sunny afternoon, as summer gently returned once more, Grayson stood quietly at Melissa's favorite cliffside overlooking the ocean, accompanied by Haley and the twins. Together, they silently scattered flower petals into the breeze, honoring Melissa's memory, thanking her softly for the profound gift of family she had ultimately provided. Haley leaned gently against Grayson's side, speaking quietly yet sincerely. "She'd be so proud of us, of you especially. You became everything she always believed you could." Grayson felt deep emotion tighten his throat, gently wrapping his arm around Haley's shoulders, feeling profoundly grateful for her quiet reassurance and unwavering trust. "She believed in me when I didn't," he murmured softly, "and you showed me how to become the man she saw beneath everything else." As they returned home later, the twins sleeping peacefully in their car seats, Haley softly humming beside him, Grayson felt quietly at peace, content, grateful, and deeply humbled by the life he now fully embraced. Though uncertainties and challenges still awaited, he no longer feared the unknown future ahead. Parenthood, family, and love had quietly but completely reshaped him, teaching him patience, resilience, compassion, and humility he previously lacked. That evening, after carefully tucking the twins into bed, Grayson found Haley quietly waiting for him in the living room, thoughtfully holding a small box wrapped carefully in brightly colored paper. "I wanted to give you something," she began softly, shyly handing him the small package. Curious, Grayson carefully unwrapped it, discovering a framed drawing she had carefully created, depicting their family, clearly labeled in Haley's neat handwriting: "My family, Dad, me, Lucas and Logan." Emotion overwhelmed him gently, and he hugged Haley tightly, deeply touched by her thoughtful gift. "Thank you, Haley," he whispered sincerely, voice thick with emotion. "It's perfect, just like our family." As night fell quietly around them, Grayson carefully hung Haley's drawing prominently, proudly displayed in their home. Reflecting quietly on their journey, the fears, uncertainties, grief, and ultimately joy, he felt profound gratitude for the family he had never planned yet now couldn't imagine living without. He realized clearly now, true success wasn't measured by wealth, power, or control, it was defined simply by love, compassion, and the quiet strength of family bonds. His heart felt genuinely at peace, filled with warmth, joy, and unconditional love, the true measures of a meaningful, fulfilling life. In my opinion, the ending of this story feels both earned and deeply moving because it reflects the quiet power of transformation through love. Grayson's journey from a closed-off, self-contained businessman to a compassionate father is not sudden or overly idealized, it's gradual, human, and full of emotional truth. What makes the conclusion so satisfying is that it doesn't just focus on what Grayson gives, but on what he receives. Through Haley, Lucas, and Logan, he discovers the kind of fulfillment that success and wealth could never provide. The story doesn't shy away from grief, responsibility, or fear, but instead embraces those struggles as essential parts of growth. That's what makes the final chapter so powerful. It's not about perfection, but about presence, love, and choosing family every single day. And in that, it delivers a beautifully hopeful and grounded message about second chances and the unexpected ways life can heal us.